Hey everyone, wow, what an episode. I will say, I'm a little in shock, and didn't think I could still be in shock about anything Nier Automata related, but this show keeps proving me wrong. There is a lot to talk about in this episode. We have some Drakengard references, Nier Replicant references, all the way up to Automata, and this is going to be my spoiler warning to you all, because there's a lot of spoilers to talk about. And I'm also going to dive into this meaning of truth, so it might get a little philosophical on you, but with that, let's go ahead and talk about it. The episode starts off with Grimoire Rubrum. She is one of the 3 grimoires we see in Nier Replicant, and yes, she is a she. We got Grimoire Vice, Grimoire Noir, and then Grimoire Rubrum. Grimoire Rubrum is the book that you fight in Emil's library when you first meet him. Its purpose was to assist Noir and Weiss for Project Gestalt. She also does not speak for some reason. Now, all the information I'm about to share can be found in the Grimoire Nier book from the short story, and then there were none. It is a pretty crazy story. You learn about Gestalt, Weiss, Noir, and Rubrum before they were turned into grimoires. Yes, these guys were human at one point. Rubrum was originally a crusader for the Hamlin organization and met Weiss before as a human. The Hamlin organization was a secretive branch of the World Purification Commission formed in response to the Legion threat. In 2033, the Hamlin organization launched the Grimoire Project and offered certain crusaders a top secret mission. Those who were accepted were abducted and forced to fight each other. She and Weiss, along with other crusader children, were locked into a room and made to fight each other with magic. Those who fell were turned into the grimoires. Weiss and Rubrum tried to stay out of the way. Unfortunately, they were unsuccessful, and this led to the creation of Grimoire Weiss, Noir, and Rubrum. What I thought was interesting reading this story was Weiss and them were children when they were recruited by the Hamlin organization. The reason why they used kids was because they used this medicine, Luciferus, which I feel like I'm butchering that name, but it had protective properties against the Legion, and it only worked on kids. And the younger that they were, the better that it worked. And also, they had a problem that no one could mass produce it. Weiss talks about how even though they are Legion and they're told that they're mindless creatures, it doesn't feel good that they have to kill what still looks like human. Weiss was only 10 years old when he killed his first Legion. 9 years later, he still is not used to it. Each kill for him was the first time all over again. That's some pretty dark stuff right there. As these pages are opening, I'm going to explain in more detail on what happened during these events. Now, we see someone open the book, and the first image we see is from the June 12th incident in 2003, or as we all know it as Ending E in Drakengard 1. We see the Queen Beast land in Tokyo, and Angelus and Kayam follow her and defeat her. We hear Devola and Popola explain that these 2 entities fought and died, and an incurable illness went rampant. You can see that image of Angelus on top of the tower and the Queen Beast falling apart. Also, I did a quick look. Yes, this dialogue that is being said to us right now, it is the twins. Accord is not listed in the credits, so sorry to anybody that was partially hoping that it was her. Then we get a glimpse of what the Legion look like, which we have seen images of this in the Nier Reincarnation game as well. Looking at that short story with Weiss in them, can you imagine being children and having to fight these things? Also, when you look at the character design for Eve and when he transforms in that final battle, his back almost looks just like these Legion. Then we see an image of someone turning to salt and dying. The first victim was reported in December of 2003. The victims had 2 choices. They either make a pact with God and lose their humanity and become a member of the Legion, or turn into a pile of salt. Legion are former humans driven to rampant brutality by the white chlorination syndrome. They would turn into monsters and start attacking their fellow humans. The first report of a Legion was in April of 2004. Their skin is white due to the calcification caused by the disease. While they do have reduced intelligence, they also possess increased physical abilities. In March of 2014, Project Gestalt launches. As the twins are explaining here, they figured out how they could separate the human soul from its body. You see scientists, it looks like they could be studying the Maso, and then we see a diagram of a replicant and a Gestalt, and the Gestalt looks just like a shade. The plan was to remove the soul from the body and build vessels created to look like humans to put the souls back into. Replicants were created in January of 2025. And then, like I said earlier, Grimoire Noir project began. Grimoire Weiss and Grimoire Noir were created to put the souls into the replicants' bodies. In 2049, it is discovered that they need someone with a large amount of Maso to help keep the Gestalt from relapsing and turning violently deranged, and sadly, eventually dying. They need someone who can keep their awareness or sentience when they turn Gestalt. So they create a bunch of copies of Grimoire Noir and gives them to the poor and see who survives. This is where the beginning of Nier or Nier Replicant starts. Nier sees people who touch the book are turning into Gestalts and begin attacking Yona and him. So they make a run for it and hide in this store. And this is also why you see 2 Grimoire books in the beginning of the game. While on the run, Yona, as we saw in the the game touches the book and begins to turn Gestalt, but she is immediately beginning to relapse. The Hamlin organization offers to put Yona in a coma for 1,000 years until the world is free from disease. In exchange, Nier would provide the Maso needed to help Project Gestalt. He agrees and turns Gestalt. Oh, and also, the Hamlin organization, they had no plan for Yona. We are now shown the original twin androids that were created as observers for Project Gestalt. The twins worked hard for the day the souls could be put into the replicant bodies. But by 2764, the replicants began to gain a will of their own, which is where they begin to talk about in this episode where Devola and Popola are unable to control the vessels that were created to save humanity. By year 3000, most of the replicants have begun to create their own culture. Then we start to see the page show more events from the Nier Replicant game. You see the giant shade that you fight right before the 5-year time skip, but I'm going to backtrack a minute here. In 3288, the Gestalts begin to wake up, but replicants now have free will and saw the Gestalts as monsters, and they were dubbed, as we all know, shades. And the replicants started to fight the Gestalts. Like said in this episode, as a result, Devola and Popola could not fulfill their duties. And we see an image of the twins with Nier, Kaine, Emil, and Weiss. By 3300, there was a war growing between the Gestalts and the replicants. Gestalt Nier realizes something needs to change if he's going to save his sister. By the year 3454, Gestalt Nier has Grimoire Noir, and Replicant Nier has Grimoire Weiss. With those pieces in place, the twins had the Replicant Nier go and collect the sealed verses so Weiss and Noir can fuse and initiate Project Grimoire. Problem is, Gestalt Nier has no faith in this plan. He takes it upon himself to capture Replicant Yona and fuse Gestalt Yona with her. He also plans to eventually do the same with his own body. Then we see what they said was a catastrophic failure, and you see an image of Popola holding Devola when she dies after you fight them. And they talk about how Project Gestalt failed, and that is how humanity went extinct. Because of Gestalt Nier taking it upon himself to capture Replicant Yona, Replicant Nier found what he calls the Shadow Lord and his sister. Gestalt Yona chooses to destroy herself because she can hear Replicant Yona crying for her brother, and she did not want to live like that. And then that leads to Replicant Nier killing Gestalt Nier, dooming humanity. Project Gestalt seemed to be going smoothly, but two factors, the relapse of the Gestalts and the development of free will among the replicants, have doomed this project. With Gestalt Nier dead, any remaining Gestalts will eventually relapse and perish. And since the replicants are unable to reproduce and require data from their Gestalt to create new bodies, they will all die out with this generation. Now this next part I'm going to read to you is still part of the Project Gestalt's reports. We may never know whether Replicant Nier knowingly chose Yona over the world's survival when he killed Gestalt, but unless a new original Gestalt is found, humanity will disappear from Earth in the very near future. Now that we got a history lesson on how we got here, we now see Devola and Popola trying to find any survivors. Popola says once again, we aren't able to protect them. Then we see Popola start to say, but they all, and Devola interrupts her saying, don't say it. Curious on what she was going to say here. I love and hate these moments of leaving it up to us to interpret. They are interrupted by the voice coming from the tower, and we hear the same thing we heard in the last episode. So now we've seen A2, 9S, and the twins' point of view from this moment. And then we see them all head for the tower. We see 9S is already at the tower, and this is where things get interesting. We see 9S heading to the door, and Pod is warning him that it could be a trap. Pod is basically pointing out, big ass door like this just screams trap, but 9S doesn't care. He will destroy all the machines. Now we see text appear, and it is in the angelic text, and I was actually able to translate these. And it is the 3 passwords that I got. I did not even bother trying to translate the Grimoire Rubrum text that we see, because I couldn't make out the letters, and it is super challenging trying to do that with what I found online. So those who have patience to try, power to you. But you see the text here, it's my sin, our curse, memories of light. Even using the password, the door doesn't open, so 9S decides to hack in. We see him in a room that is just empty, and then a doorknob appears, and the 3 passcodes turn into a key. He opens the door with it, and then he goes into the dark room. And then we see someone walking towards him, and then he turns around to strike, and we see it is another 9S. He wonders if it's copied data, but the other 9S explains that it is not. He was once 9S at some point, and then leads him to the Forest Kingdom. And then we see another 9S, but this one's dead behind the throne. This other 9S explains that this was also once a 9S. Now we're at the desert, and we see another dead 9S. It is explained that at one point he was also 9S. 9S begins to question what point of time was this. This other 9S explains it's when he met his end. Then this other 9S starts to tell him, you haven't seen the truth yet, and now drags him to the factory where we see another dead 9S. 9S asks, he collected 3 passcodes, so why can't he move forward? The other 9S said, but you are proceeding, which is a very Nietzsche philosophical conversation right now. 9S is frustrated because he's talking about going into the tower. The other 9S explains he can keep going forward and he will eventually get to the tower, but this is going to keep going until the truth is seen. We've seen a similar conversation of the truth back in episode 12. The Red Girls are talking about giving 9S the gift of the truth.
With this, preparations are now complete, and that's why he must
be given the gift of clarity, the fruit of truth. The truth.
And then we see another head of 9S roll around and you see a figure from the top of the factory. And 9S asks, what do you mean by the truth? The other 9S says, the truth is the truth, which is also an interesting statement that is getting thrown around this episode. This phrase can also be looked at from a religious and philosophical point of view as well. The truth is not the same as something that's true or a being of fact. Truth is abstract or metaphysical, and usually it's like, is there right and wrong? Is there a God? What is the meaning of life? People seek the truth to these ultimate questions of life that matter most. We all seek the truth or meaning in life because we're hardwired that way. People seek need and purpose, meaning, fulfillment, and dignity only found in truth, and having a higher purpose outside of yourself and for something bigger than yourself. We must seek the truth in all investigations and live in the truth. Some live a lie. To live in delusion is to not live in reality or the truth. The truth doesn't change according to our ability to stomach it. According to Flannery O'Connor, an American novelist and short story writer, we must accept the truth to be living in a reality, or we live in delusion. The truth can be a hard pill to swallow. Anyway, we see the other 9S asking, you've picked up on it, right? And 9S begins to question if it was an enemy that has been killing him over and over again, and the other 9S says, no, it's not an enemy. And then we start to see 9S, he's seen the truth, that it was 2B. Then we see tons of different 9S bodies around him. He realizes that they were all killed by 2B. And I love this moment. The other 9S visor drops, and it's like what I've been saying. Yoko Taro says that they are blinded to the truth, but with this falling off of 9S's face, he sees the truth. And now we're at the hidden reports. Report 1 says, unplanned actions have been observed throughout the entire pod system. Report 2 says, we will recommend to the association that it be treated as an extended observation target. Okay, normally I do not do this, but let's revisit this because I have theories for this and it's at the end of the episodes when the pods are communicating. The other 9S is explaining that 2B is actually designated as 2E. I love the color scheme and how they made everything white and the only color is red in this scene. He continues to explain that Type E units destroy deserters and moles. He explained that 9S tends to learn too much information and so 2E has to kill him over and over again. 9S asks the question on why does Command keep producing the 9S model then? He must be a flawed unit. The other 9S says he doesn't know. My theory on this ties back to the original Unit 9 created by Zinnia. He created the original number 2 and number 9 models, which yes, are the original 2B and 9S. The original Unit 9 assassinated Zinnia and started to put in the plans that we know of today as Project Yorha in motion. Number 9 initially added the back door to the bunker that would allow the machine lifeforms in at any time, giving the machines the ability to destroy Yorha after a certain amount of time. The reason behind this step was because if the machines wiped out the androids, all evidence that the humans were extinct would be wiped out. Then the number 2 unit caught onto this plan that Unit 9 was making, and so she took out number 9. And here is the start of their endless cycle with these two. So I think this has some implications, at least to why they keep making 9S. And the reason I'm leaning towards this is because the other 9S says himself. But for 9S to continually be born and killed, that fact in itself is built into the foundation of Project Yorha. You're not a flawed unit. But let me know what your thoughts are on this. 9S says he sees nothing but other selves that are failures. The other 9S says, but for 2B, it was following through with the mission, a success. 9S gets upset because he thinks the other 9S makes it sound like 2B was gleefully killing 9S, which we all know isn't true. The other 9S says, we were all killed and we started over and over again. 9S is the result of that. And when 9S says, but 2B died, the other 9S explains that is an important part. And we see the scene from the ending credits of all the different 9S's. He's explaining that they all died, but our current 9S is different. He survived and 2B was lost in your place forever. A new final that has never happened before. for a new ending. And this is what I've been saying. This is like that theme that they have going with ending E in the game. When you say yes on ending E, you're willing to go back to the beginning. You're willing to potentially start all over again, make some of the same choices and mistakes, or maybe make different choices and different mistakes along the way, which also means you're saying yes to potential of more loss and suffering. The other 9S explains that the success to be truly wanted to fulfill was perhaps for 9S to be standing there right now. But 9S says he doesn't want an ending like that. He didn't need it. Then we see this blackness heading towards them. They both make their escape, and 9S makes it to the empty room, and the other 9S stays in the doorway. This is as far as he goes. He says no matter what ending, our feelings for 2B won't change. He tells 9S that he will always be with him, and the other 9S tells him please move forward. And then we see him getting stabbed, telling us that he is another 9S that at some point fell to 2E. He can't move forward. 9S says move forward, but 2B isn't here, and then the other 9S smiles and forces 9S out. And then we hear 9S ask, why is it just me? Pod says there was a loss of 9S self-conscious data with memory sectors, and then because of that, it triggered the door to open. To me, this says that the other 9S sacrificed himself to help 9S move forward. So in the novel, long story short, it is explained that 9S had ideas that 2B was really 2E. He had learned about the executioner type and realized that there were gaps in his memories. Also, looking at 2B, she was a strong battle type unit. She was stronger than most other battle type units. So he didn't want to believe it, but he definitely had his suspicions. What did you guys think of that whole scene with 9S talking to his other self? Then we see machine life forms heading right for 9S, but he is in no shape to fight. Pod is advising him to retreat into the tower, but he is driving on wanting to destroy the machines. But shocker, I know, he falls. But then we see the twins, and you start to hear the Song of the Ancients playing, and just like in the game, it looks like the twins might attack 9S. And what I thought was so cool was how this plays out like the game, but it's different dialogue. In the game, 9S is trying to hack into the door, and the girls are saying that they will hold off the machine while he breaks in. But in this episode, they're telling him they will take care of things and he needs to rest, and then they'll heal him after. This fight was cool to watch in the anime. After the fight, they heal him. The girls explain to 9S that the resistance camp was annihilated. They explain it was because of a virus that was spread rapid throughout the resistance. While 9S takes a moment to grieve over the resistance being destroyed, they are interrupted by more machine life forms. And then we hear Song of the Ancients again. They make a run forward to the tower, but the tower blocks Devola and Popola from entering. 9S goes back out to check on them, but the door is closing. We are now seeing something similar to what happened in the game. Popola tries to hold the door open, and Devola is holding off the machines. 9S does not want to leave them there, and Popola explains that they have to atone for the sins we've committed. Devola pushes 9S through the door. Devola says, we don't want to regret anything. In the game, it's the same scene, but in the game she says, I hope you don't regret this, which is an interesting twist of words. It also hit a little bit harder when we got that zoom in on Devola's eye and the door shuts. But then in the novel, she says, don't leave any regrets. Then we see Grimoire again, and we're getting an explanation again about Project Gestalt. In the game, after this moment happens, we're basically getting a short story of text that appears on the screen. It is explaining Project Gestalt and a little of what the twins have gone through. Just now in this episode, we see it play out, and I am all for it. They are both shown as apologizing while insisting the other's apology isn't necessary. Now we see more pages turn, and we see Lily and some of the other resistance. And then we see on the other page, the twins and a bunch of fingers pointing at them. They are explaining that since only androids were left on Earth, the secret of humanity's extinction had been hidden, and the Devola and Popola models become hated since they look exactly like the original models that failed. We see some of that hatred in these moments because Devola is injured, and her injury is from another resistance member, which is why we see her leg damaged. We also see the griefs that they struggle with, and how it is unfair. It wasn't them specifically that failed Project Gestalt, so why are they the ones to suffer? They wonder how long will this last, and Devola says, until someday when we can atone for our sins we've committed. Popola says, that could last for eternity, and then Devola says, but there's nothing we can do. She explained all Devolas and Popolas think that way, and we see the page turn, and we see the fountain from Popola's village, and then we see the Shadow Lord's castle where you fought the twins in Nier Replicant. It is also explained that they went through a memory wipe of Project Gestalt, and they would have a constant feeling of guilt to prevent them from going haywire. And then we see they've made their way to the resistance camp. Popola tells Devola that she is glad that they are together. Popola doesn't think that she could do this alone. They can endure it because they are together. And then we see images of them traveling through the desert, and it looks like there's an image of them healing Lily. And then we see this cute one of them together. They just live their lives constantly saying, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry. And now we're back at the battlefield, and we see Devola looking over Popola, and it is flipped from Nier Replicant. In Nier Replicant, it was Popola holding Devola. Then we see Popola's face, and she says, I'm sorry, and then her eyes turn red. Devola notices it and tells her, don't apologize, Popola. Don't apologize eyes anymore. Yep, I'm crying again. God damn it, Yoko Taro. Then we see 9S and Pod in the tower. 9S asks, what's with the not regretting anything? He says such a feeling is something I've already, and the door opens behind him and we hear the voice of the tower. What is also interesting is in both the novel and the game, it is explained that Pod found the data from Devola and Popola and they were able to read that data. So in the game, we're reading this report and that is why 9S is in front of that door. But it doesn't look like that seems to be the case here. It seems he's waiting for the door to open, pondering what Devola said to him. Then it shows the episode title and it says just you and me, and that is ending O in the game. This is the ending you get in the beginning of Route C. Instead of going to the battlefield to help 2B after that EMP blast, 9S runs in the opposite direction. Then we see the pods having a discussion. Pod 43 is sharing 9S's psychological state and how it's going into a decline, and they need to handle it quickly, but Pod does not know how to treat it. So they're talking about how he needs rest and data maintenance. But here's where things get interesting. Pod 43 says the old glory to mankind, but Pod 153 says to mankind. Then the episode ends. Okay, now I'm going to jump back to Accor's reports. Report 1 says unplanned actions have been observed throughout the entire pod system. Report 2 says we will recommend to the association that it be treated as an external observation target. I think this has a lot to do with what we saw in ending E of the game. They were ready to finish Project Yorha and delete everything, but Pod stops it. And I feel like we're seeing this more and more early on. Since Pod 153 has joined A2, she's been teaching him, I guess, in a way, how to be rebellious. Looking at example of episode 20, things were looking bad. So A2 said, well, you know what they say, in times like this, suck it. And there was another instance in episode 21 where he isn't giving her orders or recommendations. He's more of guiding her and warning her about her limits and is basically cheering A2 on. And him just saying to mankind and in that tone of voice, it almost sounds reluctant to say it. The other theories I've seen is that it is this group B that was introduced in Sinnoh Alice, and they were mentioned back in episode 12 and 15, and I'm going to read it to you now what it says in Accord's notes about Group B. August 2nd, the origins of Group B is still largely unknown. It is believed that they come from an undiscovered branch. I suspect the reason why they remained unnoticed for so long is because they have set up recorders near singularities to keep us away from them. On March 12th, the last time there was a cataclysm, it gave rise to a large number of Group B. They even have weaponry capable of countering our aerial weapons. Things are getting out of hand. We managed to keep them at bay so far, but the situation continues and we will be completely overpowered. On June 5th, it seems that we recorder models will need to adapt. The development of replacement armament parts is progressing, but more investment is needed. Weapons distribution needs to be increased to facilitate memory relocations. There is a lot of work to do. On August 8th, the previous recorder was destroyed by Group B. Since there is a possibility that it was captured, I'll have to request assistance from the association. And when I look further into it, yes, it looks like this is all still a mystery on how this is all connected. So with that, I've covered everything from this episode, and man, there was a lot of references, and I give credit to the creators of this anime. I am left in shock and speechless for each episode. I think this has to be one of my favorite game turned anime adaptations. I hope you all enjoyed this video. Let me know some of your thoughts on this episode. Love talking about it, and thank you for all the continued support. As usual, there's a link to my Discord in the chat room, and if you hit that join button on my channel and become a member, you can get access to custom emojis and badges I made for this channel. Thank you all again for all your support, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye.